All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Looks like majority of y'all are here. Let others log in as they're able to find that link. The last link I sent, first one did not work very well. So, all right, hope you guys are doing well. We are here for week 12 and going to have an hour of a lecture on customer segmentation. And then at right around 8, our guest speaker will log in. He is not obviously in Texas, so we were just going to head and meet virtual. Be easier for him to just join Teams. Michael Lobin, one of the authors of your book, he will be here to give a overview on what he's seeing in web analytics, kind of touching on the digital transformation uh, topics we talked about before, and just some emerging areas of web analytics that he wanted to provide. So that'll be great, really good. Love for y'all to engage after he's done with his kind of guest lecture and ask any questions you have, anything about what he talked about tonight or the book or just in general about web analytics or the future of marketing analytics, Google Analytics 4, just whatever piques your interest. He's very much excited to be here. I know that he's a COO of the company InfoTrust, and he's also a professor at a couple universities as well. So he's very plugged into the industry for sure. So that's exciting. So, and that'll be it. After he's done, we will conclude for the evening. But so yeah, if everybody can, please be on camera. Mainly just out of to make sure everybody's obviously here, but also for the respect of our guest speaker more than anything, because I want to make sure he feels comfortable. So if we get on camera, that'd be great. Stay on camera and all that good stuff. Do me a favor, put into the chat that you were here. That's how I want to take attendance. So just in the chat, put your presence or here. That's how I'll go back and track attendance for tonight as well. So if you can do that, that'd be awesome. I'm recording this so you can also have a copy of it for the future in case you're interested in the lecture, of course, that I've got or anything that our guest speaker had to say. And then the other topics that we'll cover tonight will kind of segue into next week, by the way. So it's kind of a two-part lecture, part 1, and then part 2 I will be concluding next week because I wasn't sure when he'd be able to meet with us. So I broke this lecture tonight into 2 parts. Part 1 tonight and part 2 next week on customer segmentation. So is there any general questions from anybody I can help answer before I kind of get into the material for tonight? And your assignments from last week will be graded, and then I will go over here a little bit later what's due next week as well. Okay. All right, so let's jump into things. So tonight what we're going to talk about is customer segmentation or, especially on the web, right? So segmentation at its core is really just taking groups of individuals with similar attributes, similar behaviors online, demographics, and really trying to learn about how we can segment to them to build effective strategies, right? But it's a little bit deeper than just they have a similar behavior. There's more things we can segment on the web and online that we can do just traditionally. We'll talk about kind of the bridge between traditional customer segmentation in marketing and online behavior to truly building out a framework for deeper online segmentation in the web. So the funnel, I always start here because this is all about how to drive the entire experience from a segmentation. We think a lot of segmentation being at the top of the funnel, right? Getting people to, start targeted marketing where we send an advertisement out to a group of people with similar attributes, similar behaviors, etc., to bring them in. But we actually can on websites, especially in e-commerce, build a personalized experience that's for a group of customers, right? There's a lot of AI automation that we can bring all the way through. So we can try to bring in that group together with an advertisement at the top of the funnel with all those campaigns that we've talked about before in social media, email marketing, whatever, targeted ad you're doing. But as you bring them in, there actually are experiences you can group, right? And put this group of people through that entire journey and funnel. Next week, what we're going to do is talk about A/B testing and talk about customer journey building. These are the tactics I'm talking about. Once you get into the website, there are definitely things on the website we can do to measure the effectiveness of why target this group from an ad, but also bring that experience all the way through the funnel on the website, right? And give them an experience that only they can get versus another group, right? Which is great because the more I can interact with customers very closely one-to-one or in a group that really speaks to them individually, the higher chance I have of conversion on the website. So that's where web segmentation goes beyond just an advertisement, right? An outbound marketing, it's inbound as well. And there's a lot of strategy there that we can do with analytics to bring them through the funnel. But we'll talk about more of those strategies more into the part next week. Because tonight we're going to talk more about is how to use the data of our customers and really build out a framework how to identify the right segment. So tonight's more about the framework of building the segmentation that you would do in web analytics or digital marketing analytics. And then next week, we'll talk about how to apply those segments that you've identified and actually build strategies to bring them through the funnel. Okay. But it all starts here, right? This entire funnel is where it starts and then all the way through. So what is market segmentation? I like the diagram over here on the right because it really just explains it clearly. Demographic information, right? So obviously age, we talk about age all the time in, website marketing. It is going to be your income levels, your education levels, anything that's really descriptive for the most part, right? Some of that can change, obviously. Your age can change. So therefore, you have to analyze that behavior as people get older, right? Things like that. But for the most part, though, when you're taking a marketing and a targeted kind of web strategy at a point in time, you're trying to group people with similar attributes around demographics, right? Income levels matter for different types of businesses. You know what I mean? Like income level for, people making over 100,000 a year versus 100,000 a year, as an example. Very straightforward benchmark. Maybe it's for a home, right? Certain homes you should market if you're a realtor to certain income levels versus others, right? Just from pure kind of analogy of who can afford what, that kind of thing. 18-year-olds are getting hit up for low credit card limits, right? So it's targeted to 18-year-olds. Build your credit. Here's a good college student credit card offer versus those who've had a credit history for 20 years. Here's a bigger platinum, whatever credit card. That's basic kind of thoughts there, but it's really what it's all about, right? From that perspective. But see, it should go beyond that though, right? So we should be more deeper into bringing other data attributes of bringing out a better representation of these groups. So then I'm going to go down here to geographic. That's simple too. It's where people live. Makes sense. How can we target our users based off IP address, especially on websites, right? I think about sports marketing all the time. Very straightforward. If you're a fan of, a certain team, perhaps if you live in that radius of that city, I want to market to you. So here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, not saying everybody who lives in this area is a Cowboys fan, but you're probably going to get a lot of ads from a fanatics.com, some kind of fan website that's going to send you material towards that local team for the most part, right? Versus if you live in Chicago, it's Chicago Bears or whatever teams, obviously in other leagues. That's just an example that we can kind of take that and match it with demographics and have some kind of story there to tell. It helps us understand, by the way, not just, the products to offer, but the story we can tell with the marketing, the design, the creative, the whole experience that we want to target to our users. But the two areas that get a little bit more in depth, I think, because again, demographic and geographic are pretty straightforward, right? It's very descriptive data points for the most part. Is behavioral and psychographic. These are ones that are more directional, more assumption based. We don't have always a one-to-one understanding exactly why people leave our website, right? We've talked about it many times around looking at page views, looking at bounce rate, the things that drive some kind of attention to us as analysts. Why are they leaving? What are they doing? Why are they not clicking through the funnel and going further, right? So there's behavioral things there we kind of have to monitor and understand. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. How do you characterize your customers that way? But that's what it's all about. What kind of behavior do users have of our websites? Now, psychographic is similar, but psychographic kind of triggers those behaviors, right? So for me not to go through your website, click around anymore and leave, well, maybe psychographic, right? The values of our customers, their belief systems. This is kind of very much consumer behavior type stuff, but it really doesn't matter in web analytics because especially if we're trying to influence them with a great advertisement on a website or a great product or price, some of those, last week we talked about deals for those who were there, able to see that lecture and understand that there's a lot of like appeal to that, right? So psychographic, it's a deal, it's a great price, or maybe emotions, right? You need this product, you want this product that really influence you. So it's tapping into those areas. And as an analyst, understanding how to combine all four of these kind of pieces, if you will, into a set of customers. Okay. So really it's members that have, very in sync, very closely related attributes of any of these particular areas, right? Now, it's not always one for one. There can be some slight variation, but for the most part, they share some common characteristics and traits, right? So you can really differentiate yourself from your competition, the better you understand that, right? The more you can really engage with your customers directly in this way of analyzing those areas, the better you off you're going to be competitive, especially in a very fast-paced online environment. There's two types of characteristics in segmentation. There's basis and descriptors. So very similar to what I just talked about, right? Descriptors, I'll go there first. Again, are things that are just descriptive kind of things. Okay. Your age, your income, your profession, even media habits, right? Media habits, as far as, where do I interact online? With social media channels, we've talked about that, the behavior there, email marketing, wherever you spend your time, what device even. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But those are descriptors because that's a point in time. I have a really mobile heavy audience, so I need to spend more time talking to them on the mobile channels, etc. Okay. Now that's B2C. What I do want to talk about a little bit tonight, though, just a little bit, is B2B as well, right? Business markets, because obviously some of y'all may end up working for a B2B type of organization or heavily B2B. And there's a different way to actually look at this from a segmentation perspective. So let's say you're a B2B sales or marketing or web analyst, if you will, business analyst, you're supporting a lot of B2B enterprise insights. So from that perspective, it's more about the company that you're targeting, right? Or the set of companies. So the industry they're in, how big they are, their organizational structure, those all matter, okay? We'll talk more about that here in a minute, but those are descriptors. Now, basis, though, is more about, again, the behavioral stuff. The basis is the basis of their decision-making, right? We're always trying to look at their behavior or psychographics, what influences people to think a certain way. From a B2C perspective, again, it's pretty straightforward in a way. Emotions, beliefs, values, what people think about your brand or product, or what do they think about your website experience, what annoys them about your website, how can we fix those things? Whereas also B2B, a little bit different from a business perspective. Sometimes it's not so much about the website functionality, it's just about, did you communicate with me at the right time? Or on a website, B2B, large enterprise kind of relationships, transactions, B2B is, you only have so much, let's say, opportunity there. Because business to consumer, we can kind of engage with consumers, right? A little bit more often. We can say, first time didn't work, I'll send you another ad or give you another opportunity to come back and I'll try to retain you or repeat that visit, if that makes sense. B2B, though, it's kind of like, you have one shot almost in a way, right? You're really presenting yourself out there and trying to make a large order or transaction or relationship contract, whatever you want to call it. And there's a lot of competition with that. So that's a little bit more understanding how to really be more direct with the insights, right? How do I analyze who makes the decision in the organization? Is it the CEO or is it just some kind of middle manager representing the entire company? How large of a business is this? Startup companies have a different flair of decision making versus really long-term, really established large organizations, right? So it's understanding those things and how to like dynamically analyze those behaviors of those organizations to market to them and offer experiences, right? So kind of this is what it's all about. Now, this is business markets. I want to spend a minute on that again because, while we talk a lot about consumer-driven B2C stuff in this class, here, though, from a segmentation perspective, you have a lot of opportunity in business to business because at that point, you're at the organizational level, right? You don't really have a lot of consumer, deeper, more segmentation layers to go through. With business to consumer, you do have that, right? With consumer-driven e-commerce and online interactions, there's a lot of different varieties of segments you can look at, right? Especially the larger portfolio of customers you have, larger portfolio of services or products you offer, the more diverse you're going to have in your data sets to look at. So for business to business, it's a little bit more, I wouldn't say straightforward as like it's easy, but it's a little more straightforward on the sets of variables you're really going to look at, right? And maybe change a little bit from time to time in your analysis, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Okay, so there's a macro and micro level though. Macro meaning exactly what I said earlier, size of the organization, what industry are you in, right? And then also what's really important in B2B is really understanding this is B2B business, period, not just about web analytics. You really have to keep in mind who is their end user, okay? You obviously are providing them a service for their end user, right? So for example, I'm a technology company, and I want to sell my software to HR departments, right? Let's say I'm a payroll company and I sell payroll. I'm ADP, I'm Workday, things you may have heard of these companies. Well, if I'm the person trying to target, there's all kinds of companies out there that need HR services, right? Pretty much any company out there. So it's not so much to say, hey, you're a small business, here's an HR package. It's you're an HR department. How big is your department? How many employees do you have? Do you want all this full blown benefits, payroll, employee training program? Like I have sets of services that I can offer, right? There's like a whole portfolio of things as a B2B relationship I can offer you. So you have to understand that at a macro perspective, at least who am I engaging with, right? Because probably a startup, small business doesn't need the full suite of services that this HR software can provide for their employees, right? Maybe they have 10 employees and they don't need a bunch of training and all this other stuff. They just need someone to capture benefits, personal records and some very basic package stuff. But you need to know that to be savvy with your business and your time, by the way. A lot of this is looking at it to honestly optimize your business, whether it's B2B or B2C, by the way. A lot of things we do in web analytics is to save time, believe it or not. We're trying to drive direct correlations and direct decisions so we can just get to the right customer at the right time. And if you do that from a segment perspective, even better, taking a cluster or a group of people and putting it together, okay? Now, from a micro perspective, right? So you have macro segmentation, higher level data points and variables. Lower than that, though, is really getting down to that level of detail around understanding in the organization who makes the decisions and how do they make decisions, right? Because every company has a different set of approval processes, or how many people need to make a group decision on something, right? How many layers you have to go through to finally get to that final decision maker, all these things. And that's really not just the web analyst job, it's the entire sales team, marketing team, etc. But at least what I can do from a web analyst perspective or a marketing analyst perspective is give the information to the right people going out there and headhunting, right? Or getting out there and developing leads for these businesses, right? If you ever work for a place and start getting cold called emails, even on LinkedIn, people start sending you stuff like, hey, I see you work for such and such company, and I think you would love our product, our service, or whatever. Well, part of that is just good analytics, knowing that you fit that profile of a company, right? And then you, as the person representing the company, because it seems like you're the right person to go after to make a decision, right? So it's all of that. It's also timelines of, their ability to do business with you. When are they in season, not in season for certain things? So just being really familiar with your clients. But at the end of the day, though, this is how we need to do it from a B2B perspective. And it can be very rewarding if done correctly and done in a way that also allows some flexibility as things do change in markets. Like right now, we're seeing a lot of tech world is hurting. I use tech. Who's seen what happened to Meta, right? Just today, Twitter. So what I'm saying by that is, if you work for those companies and you're trying to, let's say, work with those companies to like sell products in or services, probably not wanting to do that right now. So you got to pay attention to the macro environment, a little bit of micro too. They're not in a place to really make decisions on anything new right now. A company laying off a bunch of employees is not a place you want to do business with. So in a way, so that's what I'm saying. Pay attention to all aspects of what's impacting that industry and that particular company. Okay. So that's it from that perspective. I thought I'd just take a minute to talk about B2B. Because again, you all may work for some place that is B2B oriented. Now, B2C, back to that, a lot deeper. What I mean by deeper is a lot more pieces of the puzzle as far as what you can put together to kind of fit that profile of customer and customer group that you really need to understand, right? We need to understand all of these things about our customers, right? And it's good for segmentation, but it's just good to have, in general, an awareness of who these people are that's doing business with you, okay? Now, again, it can be very complex. The more products and services you offer, so the more segments you're going to have, probably. Just depends. But for the most part, though, again, remember, your basis, again, is knowing their behaviors, knowing what they need versus what they want. I think I've talked about that in this class several times, needs versus wants, right? During a recession, people have more needs than wants. When the job market's good, when the economy's good, there's more people who have want, right? Things they would like to have versus must have. So knowing where you fit into that is really important. Understand also what your product or service does. Does it solve a problem, or does it just make someone feel a certain way, right? Psychographics is all about lifestyle, how people feel. Okay, we buy products sometimes because it makes us feel a certain way. I think of like fashion, right? Clothing. You don't need to have the higher end brand of whatever, Gucci or, you don't have to have that. No one needs that, right? You want that. It makes you feel a certain way. And you like maybe like the durability of the product. But for the most part, though, we could all get by with just, lower end brands of clothing. We could get by, right? We can make it. However, though, it's okay to say if we're a higher end brand, we know that our products make our customers feel a certain way. But even taking a step back from that, Nike, you guys have a great example for Nike. Nike has all kinds of opportunities to speak to different segments beyond just descriptors like demographics and age and all that. They have an ability to talk to those who are pro athletes or pro fitness people versus just getting into it. Like I can talk to you and provide you an experience to make you feel like you're getting acclimated with fitness. I don't want to turn you off from it. You might be hesitant to get started, so let me ease that experience up for you a little bit, offering the entry level products and marketing to speak to you, to the middle kind of area where there's kind of the everyday person working out. Like there's all kinds of ends of the spectrum on that alone, right? Psychographics is very important because a lot of the time when we're online, we're browsing, we start feeling things, right? We start thinking through our mind about what we're looking at. How does it make us feel? Sometimes, obviously not everything, but in the way that we normally do as just human beings, right? So that's really important. But from that though, usage and behavior. So a lot of the things we're going to look at, like we said, clicks, views. If you're on an app, by the way, the amount of daily active users, right? How many people are on our app at any given point? So whether it's an app or a website, usage is critical. This is a measurement of psychographics, right? How often people use something or look at something or interact with an element on a website is in return based on something that they're thinking about or that's giving them some kind of influence. So you kind of have to marry those things together. Okay. What we're ultimately doing though, by understanding those fundamentals of like psychographics and behavior, we want to influence decisions, right? We really want to get to that point where we know our customer base well enough to influence them, right? And this is an ongoing maintenance thing though of analytics. It's not always a one and done. Okay. It's a challenge at times to keep that going as far as knowing exactly what's going to influence your customers because things can change, right? We know that. We've said that before with all the other dynamics of business, online especially. However, though, if you can build your segment at a foundational level, it all comes down to building a foundation understanding of your general customer segments. Then at times, bringing in and out of certain variables, right? So maybe today you have a customer group that's this age group with this income level, that's a passive shopper who fits this segment of lifestyle, right? Like there's these things here. Well, something somewhere in that variable set can change, right? The lifestyle appeal or the age group. Maybe we need to change the age group up a little bit or down a little bit, right? Get more segmented because the range we have is a little too high. And that's sometimes okay. You want to start here and work your way down. But what I'm saying is though, it's the fluidity of the analytics to be willing to look at it from time to time, to take variables in and out or change the scales a little bit. That's how you find that kind of pinpoint to say this segment is good for a while. Now, again, none of these are permanent because your customers change. Everything changes, of course. But for a while, you should have some level of familiarity of your segments. So when you take all these things put together, you truly have a story now about your customer. You have an ability to really build out segments, and we'll talk about how to do that in just a moment. But beyond just knowing them, like as far as their traits and behaviors, right? You keep in mind, though, too, that psychographic and behavioral patterns and characteristics, data points, whatever you want to call it, they're assumption based sometimes. Unless you're using a survey, of course, direct commentary or a focus group or some way to get direct social media comments. If you're really looking at it from a click and view and bounce rate perspective, it's directional, okay? Meaning that it's okay to have an assumption here, right? It's qualitative, but you can take the qualitative insight of the clicks and the views and the bounce rate, whatever metrics you're using to kind of evaluate the experience, and make it quantitative. What I mean by that is to say, we see a lot of people going to this part of the website, and we've tried an opportunity to engage with them. Bounce rate's up, it's not working. So directionally, right? With a quantitative metric of bounce rate, as an example, that segment is not responding to whatever we're offering them. Or the offering's fine, or the segment is not the right segment to target with this particular offering. What I mean by offering, it could be anything from a marketing element, price, product, etc. So that's why it goes hand in hand between what you're showing them and the offer, basically, versus who the segment is. Now, here though, in web, right, taking a step further, right, a lot of what I just talked about was somewhat traditional segmentation. From a website perspective, though, this is where we need to build the journey with that. Knowing that in the segmentation of the cluster and group of people that we've got, what we do with them through that funnel is what we need to analyze, right, at each step of the funnel. So let me go back a few slides and say what we did for them to get them to the store and the advertising. While the segmentation may be the same group of people, how we kind of now build that experience step by step through the funnel is what changes. Okay. Maybe that we went really heavy on the advertising on a particular message, right? We want to carry that message all the way through, but at some point, that message that brought them in, right, needs to change a little bit now. Because when I get to the product as the next step, I need to sell that product more than I do, kind of some kind of emotional message at the top of that. Let's talk about the features and benefits of the product now, right? I got you with some clever marketing hook from whatever marketing channel. Now you're in. Same group of customers, but now I need to walk them through the aisle a little bit, right? If you just really do use the analogy like walking through a retail environment or some in-person environment, right? There's elements of psychology we need to remember through that journey of the customer, right? Now I want to learn about the product. So my journey and segment here is now, hey, this is where I need to build out a better product page, product display, representation, whatever. Then when I made up my mind, I've been influenced to buy now, then I have a really good process through the funnel of buying the product, upselling, etc. Okay. We'll talk more about that a little bit more next week, but it's fundamentally, I'm presenting it tonight. So next week, when we talk about journey building, what that really looks like and how to do it. Okay. But again, it's all about the fundamentals tonight to say that web is beyond just an ad. It's all the way through the funnel and using the segmentation and knowing how to curate your journey, the experience all the way through. Okay. So we call it also audience segmentation. So from a very much web analytics perspective, customer segmentation and audience segmentation are relatively the same thing. The only difference is between the term customer segmentation and audience is that you're on the web. That's it, right? So there's really no difference in if you're talking to someone and say, what's your customer segment versus your audience segment? Not a lot different, except for device and channel in which you're communicating with them on. Because your audience is now saying, where am I speaking to my audience? Okay. Your customer group is that. It's a very much just cluster of people that you're targeting with ads or an experience. Your audience, though, is the communication part, right? So when you're talking audience segmentation, now what you're really saying is communication. Who's the audience I'm speaking to, right? Same group of people even, but it's about the conversation now you're having internally, okay? You're not going to say I'm speaking on social media to this customer group. You're going to say your audience normally, right? It's more about the articulation of where you're at in your strategy. So like it says here, audience segmentation is crucial to the digital sphere because what you're trying to do in the realm of digital and on web is influence your audiences to do something, okay? Customer segmentation is more of a baseline. This is your group. This is the characteristics of them, but your audience is more about now how you're going to influence and communicate. It's just a terminology and how you use it through the funnel and through the experience, right? So imagine customer segmentation being more of a foundational analysis, looking at all these attributes and bringing them together. Then when you actually start talking strategy, start talking how I'm going to bring them through the funnel, then you start at times using the term audience. That's really the biggest kind of difference, if you will. This diagram is really good because this is really kind of shapes the narrative for what you're doing with customer analytics. You can call them customer analytics. You can call them CRM analytics. All companies have some type of name for this practice, right? So they're going to call it consumer insights, customer analytics, CRM analytics, whatever you want to call it, it's all relatively the same thing, okay? But our goal is to understand it, though. How do we build a strategy for that segmentation, right? There's no point in understanding our audience if we're not going to understand how to speak to them and drive ultimately conversion. So it all starts here with that mass marketing, right? Well, it's also the big thing about being an analyst in this area is knowing when to mass market and when to do segmentation analytics, by the way, or not do the analytics, but use segmentation for strategy. It is absolutely okay to still have mass marketing, speak to all your audience via digital marketing or on a website to give everybody the same experience if you want. That is fair. It makes sense actually during certain types of campaigns. Last week we talked a lot about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Well, those kinds of events for web is very much for everyone, right? There's a hodgepodge of deals and you're looking for stuff. Like there's no need to go so segmented for that because you want to give an opportunity for everybody to see everything you offer for the most part. Okay. Or you're kicking off a brand or a launch of a product that can pretty much be a one size fits all for everyone for the most part, right? A lot of people can see it. And if they're not, by the way, if they're not in the market for it, somebody else may be. So obviously you want to mass market something to get someone aware of it so they can refer to someone else or buy it for a friend as a gift, whatever. However, though, we do know that we want to segment part of the time and segment maybe on a regular basis outside of big campaigns we want everybody to know about, kind of the day in and day out stuff, right? Well, market segmentation is just that right there. Okay. That's that first step that I talked about, taking all those things between behavior, psychographic, demographic, and geographic, all those layers in between there. You build out your segments from that point. You kind of build them out, right? Well, then what you need to do next, though, is really on the funnel perspective, the audience of understanding who are the most involved with you and who's not, right? This is kind of where you can actually build out some customer loyalty programs too. Customer loyalty programs, this is what you do. This is the exact framework to get to that loyalty program on understanding how to build that loyalty, which, by the way, increases your lifetime value, etc. But now you start taking those segmentations and now looking at it from a behavioral perspective, right? Who's the most engaged audience versus down here at the bottom, evacuate ones that are just, they're kind of dormant. They visited you once, maybe twice in a year as an example, but they never bought from you, or they really are hesitant to even, they look at your ad, but don't even click through. We have encourage, who are kind of the middle of the road customers, right? The ones who are just somewhat thinking about, there's an opportunity here if you can incentivize me, if you give me another promotion or more of a trust to work with you or do business with you, whatever. That group actually has a lot of opportunity to increase that customer lifetime value. Because if you think about it, the evacuate take a lot of persuasion, a lot of influence. There's something there that's just not working for them. You might be able to get a few of them to really change their mind, but they're pessimists, right, about your online business. Whereas engage, you really want to optimize those, increase that retention of your best customers. Absolutely, increase how much they're buying from you too. Absolutely. But if you're looking for truly acquisition and to grow from your base, because if you think about it, your engaged audience is your base, right? That's great. Everybody needs a base. You need your foundational set of customers who you can rely on for traditional, sales and marketing and just everyday business, right? You need them actually. But the encourage group is actually where you get creative with marketing, get creative with your analytics and figure out the variables to find a way to influence them, right? Because they're almost there. They're like, they've added an item to a cart. These are engaged people, right? Or excuse me, encourage. The people in the yellow. They've added to cart. They viewed a lot. They just never bought. There's something there that you can do, like I said, strategically to influence them. Throw them a coupon. Throw them a better targeted ad. Do something. Give them an incentive. It doesn't always have to be money, by the way, but something to influence them. And that's the fun part of analytics at times with customer segmentation, right? We know a lot about you, but we just want to find that one thing that makes it stick. And when you have that aha moment and you see in their analytic results that you've done something to influence them, it gets really good, right? So that's an important part to know. Occasion-based marketing or targeting. So with that said, we're absolutely going to target our users once we know what's going to work or not, right? It depends where they are in the funnel, by the way, too. Like I said, if we're trying to get them to come back to our site, period, it's the advertising. But a lot of the time, again, it's just about getting people to convert, figure out where they left off on their journey and bringing them back into the journey to click through and convert. But at the end of the day, what really matters is, honestly, you could be yourself a consumer and a part of a group, and you won't even know it, right? Like you're getting personalized ads, you're getting a personalized experience, but you could be part of a larger group of people who have similar traits as you and behaviors, etc. But at the end of the day, though, you're feeling that one-to-one engagement. So truly, when we say personalization in e-commerce and in online marketing, personalization goes beyond just thinking that we're always being one-to-one. Believe it or not, it's actually a group segment that we're speaking to. But as an end consumer, the traditional consumer doesn't know these technologies exist. They're aware of it, but they don't know how it works, right? We're not manipulating anybody either. We're just using savvy analytics and online automation and artificial intelligence to get to the customer in that way. So one-to-one engagement is really what we're delivering at the end of all this, right? So yes, it's taking a big pie of mass marketing all the way down. But our job as analysts is to kind of massage those technologies a little bit, right? We'll bring in variables that say, hey, if we tried this element out, this creative design, tried this functionality of the site, tried this different search term, all the different things you can do on a website, and try to curate an experience that gets them to feeling one-to-one engaged as a consumer, and then through the funnel, right? So this is how you build a buyer persona or build a customer segmentation. You start with the fundamental of building a buyer persona, right? So tactically, what you do is you actually kind of build a profile, right? A buyer persona is a term that's used just to talk about the ideal customer, okay? Now, not the ideal customer as in like, yeah, the one that gives us the most money and is the most loyal to us. That's what you want to have happen. It's the buyer persona of who fits your general kind of segment for the most part, right? Now you can have multiple buyer personas, by the way. The buyer persona is actually a profile. You can actually come up with a name, right? A fictitious name for this persona, right? It allows you to easily inside your company speak to each other about like how we're going to market to who and how we're going to build an experience for certain types of customers. Okay. So really a buyer persona is the ideal customer that makes sense to build an experience for. And you're not doing it though based on what you believe necessarily either. You do some of that. You bring in your knowledge of your business. Obviously, you have a track record of knowing a foundational level of who your customer should be. You're in business for a reason. So obviously, you know that you have some foundational knowledge of your customer, but you don't have the knowledge about what's going to change in their behavior. That's up to your customers to show you that. That's why we say customer data is fueling a lot of what we're doing now. For being very customer centric. Well, this is where being customer centric and the data of that is really pivotal. Okay. So your buyer persona is ideal based on what they also are putting out there as well. So this is what you do. You start asking questions, right? And you actually got to spend the time, like a workshop, if you will, with a group of your peers in your your team, if you will. So, and it can be cross-functional, by the way. Bring in the sales team, bring in marketing, bring in e-commerce, whoever. But talk about your customer, right? Use the data you have, but then talk more about them. What is their personal info? What is their demographics? Bring that in. But then bring in more than that, though. That stuff's easy. Bring in like what is their goals and challenges? Our product does so many things, but what does this customer group need more than the other? Right. Let's go back to finance as an example. We know we offer a variety of credit cards. Well, which credit cards meet the needs of certain customers are different than others. So what is the challenge for someone who is 22 out of college, making 40,000 a year in their first job versus the challenge for the guy who's 50 making 200,000 a year and he's a VP of something, right? They're more, there's different psychosis there that we need to understand and build that persona. So I may have one persona that fits that younger out of college, 22, making 40K a year versus this persona over here, that more established seasoned executive making 200,000 a year. Okay. And I have different things I can offer them. Right. But it's not just saying that makes sense from an income perspective. The challenges of the person at 22 is they're trying to build a credit history. They're trying to build a life for themselves. On average, maybe they're not married yet, or they are married, but they don't have a big family yet, right? Or they have a newborn coming, right? Where someone who's usually 50 or older maybe has kids. They're raising them through college right now. So their financial needs are different, right? Think about the life of your consumer. So your persona, we call them buyers, but really your customer persona is meeting the needs of them at that point in time and understanding that their journey is going to be different with you. Okay. So that's kind of understanding their psychosis, their psychographics, not knowing it directly, but you can assume these things based on what we know as being human beings, living our lives, right? Looking at what's out there in the market. Then also on top of that, where are they? Very important, right? Bring in your devices. So look at devices on Google Analytics. Who's the majority using what device? Is it mobile? Okay, great. Put that mobile device in that persona. Is it desktop? Put that in that persona. Maybe it's both. Beyond that, though, who's your Apple users versus Android? So Bob, let's call it Bob. Bob is our buyer persona. Give him a name. Bob. He's 50. He's between the ages of 45 and 60. Bob uses Android because we have a data point that says majority of our users in this age group is an Android user. Why does that matter? Because certain elements can only be seen on Android apps versus Apple apps, and Apple also lately has also cut off, the ability to track certain things because of their privacy updates, and you need that information. So there's these like dynamics you have to understand. Bob is also very much online between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. and back on between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. So don't bug Bob between 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. Right? Know that stuff. Put that in here because that's the kind of stuff that you're going to build as far as a regular foundation of this buyer persona. Once you build Bob, right, as this example, everybody who fits that Bob characteristic or that Bob persona you put into that, right? Bob is a role model for all the customers that fit that group. And that's really what you're going to do. And then talk about their values and fears. Bob is a Christian. Bob is 50 years old, between 45 and 60, and Bob is a Christian. We know that because of everything he buys is very value based on Christianity. So we don't want to market to Bob products that don't fit a Christian lifestyle. And I'm going to use that because it's reality, right? We look at these things in that way. Or Bob is a avid traveler, simple thing like that. We know that because Bob buys a lot of outdoor and a lot of excursion type products. So let's not give Bob something that makes him feel like he's going to be at home. Give Bob a experience of something that we offer that's based on vacations or outdoors, etc. Okay, that's values and fears. It's about their interests, etc. Okay, but also negative info, right? Bob, who's 45 to 60, loves the outdoors, lives a Christian lifestyle, has $200,000 a year, so we can offer him maybe higher end merchandise, maybe. But Bob also is a very pessimistic shopper. Put that in your buyer persona. I'm making up these attributes, but we can do that, right? He's the one that I need to really incentivize to buy. So this profile of Bob, anybody who fits that kind of directional profile, I need to put into one group, and they're the ones I want to market those types of things to and build experiences for. Okay, but these starter questions are kind of just a starting place. What you want to do though is have a foundation to build from after this exercise. So let's say you've never done it as an organization, right? Or you're really going to start from scratch. Because sometimes we do this exercise and we redo it every year, maybe every 2 years. You don't want to change the foundation that often. So what I mean is Bob in this buyer persona for about a year, maybe 2 at most, will be our foundation. But every now and then we bring in new thought, new questions. We kind of modify it as we go. Because what you don't want to do is change this persona too often because you don't have trends to look at that point, right? You need a foundation of a persona or a segmentation that you can build from. You can build strategy from, right? Your segmentation somewhat have to be somewhat foundational for a while because the only way you know you're going to make an influence in the funnel and a change in general on their behavior on trying to incentivize them to buy or whatever you're trying to do to convert is that, right? You have to have something to build from in strategy. But let's say for a while, though, nothing works. Then go back to the drawing board. The very root of this is your segmentation. And again, web has a variety of things to look at too. Like I said, behavioral makes sense, demographics, the user type and source, where are they coming from is very important. And all this, by the way, we'll look at more next week in Google about how to look at all this stuff and bring in a profile view of customers. But device is very important and also categories. Now, categories, by the way, isn't just what they're interested in, it's where they came from that drove them to your site. If, for example, a business website brought me in to look at something from an outdoor enthusiast perspective, not just an ad, by the way. Imagine I'm reading about Dick'sSportingGoods.com, and I'm interested in something that's going on at Dick's Sporting Goods. It's a business article, by the way, no advertisement. I'm just reading about a latest thing going on at Dick's Sporting Goods. That makes me think now, trigger my outdoor enthusiast mentality, right? Now I'm actually looking at what's causing this kind of psychology of our customer online to look at things differently from different websites, right? We start in one place and then we go over here and do the next thing. Okay. I'll start reading a news article or a blog or something, and that triggers my mind to go, you know what? I really want to see that one thing I've looked at related to this in a way is on sale. That segmentation also, understanding the journey around your customer's experience beyond just your website. Here, though, again, are all the different behavioral things. You can absolutely break this down as far as you want to go. I will say, though, the more narrow you get in your segmentation, I caution that, because at some point you're going to saturate yourself on having too many segments to honestly manage, right? The more segments you have, the more you have to pay attention to them, build strategy, analyze. So you want a good number. Now, what's a good number is subjective to your organization, right? If you have a large profile of a lot of customers and a wide portfolio of products and services, you're probably gonna have more segments in theory. But with that, though, you want to be very scalable, that you can manage that. If you have a very unique business that's a very direct product, one type of product, one very unique solution, whatever, then yeah, you're gonna have a smaller segment a little bit. There's no exact number that makes sense. It needs to make sense for your organization. Obviously, you'd have more than 2, 3, maybe, because customer segments, if it's just all your customers, there's no segment. It's mass marketing. But this right here, though, is where you want to categorize your customers, though, on that influence piece. This for web is critical. Again, we know a lot about them demographically or a lot of them descriptively, but here we're trying to influence that behavior again, right? So really get into understanding who are my price conscious customers, who's risk adverse, right? Those who need a little bit more trust, knowing that they don't want to do business with you. So how do I build trust with them? Needs proof. These are the ones that are maybe very pessimistic, who don't maybe even believe you're a legit website. Build trust with that. Make them feel secure, right? Kind of these are somewhat the same. Needs proof maybe is more so not just trusting you as a website, but the product you're offering them really needs or meets their needs, right? Give them testimonials, give them some kind of incentive to trust them on what you're offering. Now your smart customers, okay, they're smart, but that's what it is. They're smart. Like they can read between the lines a little bit. So don't try to be too influential. Don't try to, try to out savvy them. They're going to understand what you're doing, right? Maybe they work in e-commerce. You never know. Persuadable are the ones that just need some incentive. Okay. Group those people. Every time you put a coupon out there, they bite on it, right? Every time you go down in price, they're there. They're your deal hunters, perhaps, in e-commerce especially. Or they're persuadable and they just need a little bit more influence. You know what I mean? Just something to remind them as well. Abandoned cart. You leave your cart and get that email later that says, hey, you left this in your cart. You still want to buy it? That's persuadable. Yeah, I do. The I'll get it later is very passive. Okay. They are interested, but they just are the customers we sometimes call lazy. Sort of. They're the kind that just are very passive to say, no, I'll do it later. You got to make sure they get it here and now. So let them know, hey, inventory's running out. The deal's running out. Give them some kind of sense of urgency, if you will, that they'll need to get it now versus later. Or it's something that makes sense to get later too, right? Like if you're looking for something very expensive, a car, maybe you'll buy a car online. You can do that now, right? Carvana. You're buying an appliance. You're buying something that you need time to think about. Okay, we respect that. But I'm going to engage with you again at some point online to remind you to come back to consider it. Because we see that you're interested. So come back later at the right time. So it's being respectful of your customers. It's understanding them. It's understanding the right behavior that you need to give back to them. There's no reason someone who is looking for an appliance to maybe hit them up the next day to say, are you interested in that? Maybe give it 3 days. There's a psychology to say someone needs 2 or 3 days to think about a big purchase, right? If you hound them day after day for 3 days, they're going to get turned off and go somewhere else. Now, if it's like something as simple as buying a polo, right, a shirt, maybe the next day makes sense. Because at some point, it's like how much of a decision is it? You want it or you don't, kind of thing, sort of. So you have to be respectful to understanding your timing of re-engagement in these analytics and knowing the behavior of those groups that you're doing. So at the end of the day, you have to make these considerations. Articulate the strategic rationale for the segment. Answer the fundamental question, why are we segmenting to this market? Like, why are we even paying attention to this market? Okay. You actually sometimes want to take a segment and say, this is one I really won't do a lot with on those pessimistic, inactive customers, right? Put them over here to the side for a little while. Spend time on the ones you're trying to influence. It's not to say you don't care about all your customers. It means you're spending your time wisely. Your investment on advertising, your investment on the website, your investment as an analyst, your own time, right? So segment to the groups that you know you have an opportunity to influence. Not every strategy is going to work. Not every new ad, not every new website enhancement, but over time should always see things trend up if they work. And then select a set of needs-based segmentation variables most useful, right? So want and need, remember those are two different things as far as looking at your audience. Need is the things that are going to make them, no matter what, more than likely do business with you versus a want needs extra influence. Okay. Set the needs based stuff up first, usually, because those are where your bread and butter is at in your business. We need to lean on that as our core foundational business. And from that, build your goals. Okay. If I can make my core business thrive, then all the extra stuff that I can have to offer can go on top of that. If all you're doing is focusing on that nice shiny object that your customers may or may not want, go for the stuff that's core. Now, again, you may say like, well, that's hard if I work in like jewelry, for example. Sort of, but when someone needs an engagement ring versus wants, right? There's a dichotomy there. The need one is probably on a certain price point or level. The step up option when someone needs an engagement ring, right? So at some point they need one, right? Or needs a gift to buy for somebody. So even like jewelry, I'm using this as an example. No one needs jewelry per se. We can live without it. But in the world we live in, you're gonna need it for a gift. You're gonna need one at some point because you can't afford it. If you are in the market for something, you're gonna need it for a particular, experience, if you will. So that's where you go. All right, how do I market the price points or the quality of my product? That's what I'm saying. You can still do this even for things that may seem like, well, we don't need that. Well, there's a point in time when someone's going to need it if they're ready for it. It's about the readiness and understanding that when customers are ready, they'll buy. Okay. Now, select a cluster analysis procedure. We'll talk more about that next week as far as journey building and all that. I wanted to get you the foundation of how to look at it from the data point perspective tonight. Know the number of different groups. We talked about it before. And how do these segments really build out a framework for organizational strategy? Because what you can do if you do this really well, if you get your customer segments built and you have some strategies that are shown to work, your company as a whole will start paying attention to it outside of your website, right? They'll do things perhaps in other areas of your business to make it better. Supply chain can absolutely make better products or get better products to meet the needs of these segments if you tell them these segments need it, right? Based on analytics. Your let's call it, if they're brick and mortar stores, they can make the experience better in store. If it's whatever other element of strategy your company does can really flourish if you can give them the right insights of your segments from this perspective. Okay. Now, again, this is a very eye chart. This is something that we're going to segue into next week. I'm going to come back to this. This is the funnel again, but at the point of understanding the foundation of who your segment is, then we go through and build in the funnel of the overall stages of that buyer. Okay. So for next week, what we're going to talk about is the buyer purchase decision process. Truly at each point of that, what we can do strategically in a journey building exercise or A/B test, a couple of different methods. So next week's more about methods of strategy from a foundation of understanding your customer segments. Tonight, I just really wanted to talk about understanding what a customer segment is, how they're built, what kind of data we use, and how to build that framework for the most part. Okay. Again, these are the things we're going to look at next week in more detail: demographics in Google Analytics, location, behavior, devices, and channels. These are the areas of Google Analytics where you can derive to these data points, bring in the different elements, and start comparing and contrasting which data points make sense for your segments. But again, that's next week. Tonight, I just want to introduce the concepts and the fundamentals and make sure that we had enough time for our speaker, which I'm not sure if he's here yet. So I can't see the chat or anything. Does anybody have any questions from the class I can answer on this before I might give you a 5-minute break before our speaker gets here? Is there any questions about what I just provided? Okay. Well, it's a good time. Take a 5-minute break. Come back on camera right at 8, and I'll look for our speaker and get him introduced here in just a moment. So take 5 minutes. I'll see you guys here in just a moment. And feel free to get off camera for the break if you want. That's fine. Hi, Michael, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, how are you tonight?
Doing well.
Good. Thanks for joining. I give the class a quick break. They'll be back on in just 2 minutes. Your
Yep.
timing's perfect. That's all right.
Yeah.
How are things going for you these days at Info Trust?
Yeah, things are going well. Just got home from work, so a bit long day.
Well, I appreciate taking the time. I know it's a late one for you.
Yeah, no problem at all. So it's virtual. Everyone's virtual.
We normally are in person, but I made class tonight virtual just to make this easier for you instead of staring at a bunch of big screens. It's always easier for these kind of virtual guest speakers like yourself to come online like this. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay.
absolutely.
And how much time do you want me to talk?
As long as you'd like, we're good. I mean, if you have, I think we said maybe 30 or so minutes. But I understand it's late in your day, so whatever you want to do.
Okay. And what was the topic of today's discussion?
Well, today we're doing. We're at the point in customer segmentation. We're talking about how to build out your views of segmentation in Google. Well, next week's gonna be more Google Analytics. I was talking more about how to build a framework for segmentation, looking at various attributes of demographics, psychographics, and then next week what we're gonna do is talk about journey building, A/B
Mhm.
testing with your segments, and all that. But I do know you mentioned you wanted to maybe talk about digital transformation and some emerging topics there. We covered a big part of that beginning of the class with some of the first couple of chapters, the steps of digital transformation. That on the midterm they went through that exercise of talking about that, some stuff like that. So yeah,
And we'll cover some segmentation as well.
it's good, 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 good. Well, it's right at 8. If you'd like to get started, be great. So everybody, this is everybody will get on camera if they can as you get back. This is Michael Lobin. This is our author, one of the authors of the book we've been reading. So welcome, sir. We're glad you're here. This is a great class from the University of Texas at Dallas, Web Analytics, and about 20 plus here. And I think excited to have you here tonight.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the
Absolutely.
introduction. So I suspect that everyone can hear me, and I'll share a deck. Uh, so hopefully we'll make this engaging. I understand that it's an evening class, and the topic of analytics is typically not the most exciting one. Nevertheless, I hope that it can add value. So let me share my presentation.
Michael, I just want to ask, I have been recording this lecture. Are you okay with that? Or I could turn off the
Yeah,
recording?
totally
Okay.
fine.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm not going to go into too many details about corporate transformations and how that happens. I think a lot, I'm sure, will be covered in this class. But I also heard that today you are specifically talking about segmentation, and what I wanted to chat with you about is really how analytics and how data can truly make or break the organization, and how analytics is overall integral to the success of many companies that we happen to know and love, and also how poor use of analytics probably contributed to some of the organizations that are no longer there. And then you can make a decision for yourself how you want to use analytics. So whenever you join the company, where you're going to be working next or where you work now, how you would want to advise them on the use of analytics. Does that sound like a good way to spend the next half an hour to 45 minutes together?
Sounds good to me.
All right. And I appreciate the response. If you're listening to the class even a little bit, feel free to unmute yourself and pause, ask me some questions. As I'm sharing, I cannot see chat with questions. So please don't hesitate to participate, right? And let's make this engaging. You already heard a little bit about me, not going to bore you with details about my life. Michael Loban, I'm very passionate about the area of analytics as a way to drive good decisions. As you know by now the author of Chromebook Run book that you're currently using. So I hope you find that valuable. And my second book is actually coming out in January, and it's Becoming a Privacy-Centric Marketing Organization. Because over the past couple of years, there have been a lot of conversations, debates, regulations on the topic of privacy and what rights we consumers have about data that is being collected about us. And certainly now there is a big trend around privacy, and not really a trend in terms of organizations always have to treat data that they collect about us with respect, but certainly many have not done that. And there have not been many regulations telling organizations how to do it the right way, and that's changing. And because of that, many companies are struggling. So that's what I and my co-authors seek out to answer in this book. And once the book is published, happy to come back if you find this presentation helpful and talk a little bit more about the topic of privacy. About the company InfoTrust, one thing that I will say, since all of you are students and suppose at some point in your career might be looking for a job in digital analytics, we are one of the top digital analytics consultancies, not just in US, but really around the world. There's offices across different countries, working with some of the top brands, and we're always hiring. We're always looking to bring new people on board, especially today in the news when you see Facebook, Salesforce, and other organizations letting many people go. We have a very strong need to bring in a lot more people on board, especially people with strong experience and also passion in analytics. We also offer internships. So if that's something that you're passionate about, please drop me a note. So with that, let's talk a little bit about something around consumer expectations and why this is really so important when we think about overall analytics. So here you can see three little kids. These are not my kids. I borrowed them for the presentation, but this is my nephew and two of my nieces. And not too long ago, we had this interesting situation happen. I was at their house, and the oldest one, he was doing his math homework. And as he was doing his math homework, he was asking me, "Hey, Michael, how should I be solving this problem?" And I looked at the problem. It did not seem to be too difficult for me, and so I gave him the. I wanted to give him the answer, but instead kind of said, "Well, you think about this a little bit more by yourself." And I was asking him some of the questions to prompt the decision making. So he looked at me. He said, "Yeah, that's just too boring. I'm not going to be doing that." And then what he did, he said, "Hey, Alexa, how much," and whatever the math problem was. And then Alexa solved the problem for him. I certainly don't advise this for you, as you might be preparing for the exams, but something that clearly this 10-year-old is now actively leveraging. So then at some point, I take him to go shopping with me when I want to buy a new TV. I just moved them, and so I was in the store and I was looking for a new TV. And he comes to next to the TV as I'm picking his opinion, right? Which one do you like? He looks at the TV in Best Buy, and he tells the TV, "Hey, TV, change the channel." Like, "What are you doing?" And goes again, "Hey, TV, change the channel." So his experiences of Alexa, and he thinks that, well, if I'm able to tell Alexa what my math problem is, Alexa will be able to solve it for me. Now he has the same expectations when it comes to TVs. He now expects that when he is going to talk to TV, TV is going to change the channel. Obviously, that did not happen. So he looks at me and says, "Hey, this TV is dumb. You should not be getting this TV. You need a smarter TV." Obviously, it's more or less an anecdote in terms of the overall consumer expectations, right? What I mean by that is we now can simply ask devices around us to talk to Walmart and I can ask Google Assistant to reorder my favorite orange juice from Walmart. So our consumer expectations continue to rise. Right? We continuously demand more and more from the appliances, from organizations that surround us. I live in Cincinnati, and Kroger is a big grocery chain here. Now, until about 2 or 3 years ago, the only way to get groceries from Kroger was for me to go to the store, get what I wanted, and then bring it home or bring it to my office. That's not the case anymore. Now at the office, when we need to buy stuff for the office, and our office, there's really all of our offices are fully stocked with food, snacks, and alcohol to probably survive the nuclear war. Uh, what we do is we simply fill out a shopping cart on the website of Kroger, and then their car shows up and delivers all the grocery to us, to our company office, at no additional cost. Why are they doing that? Well, they're doing it because if it's not Kroger, then chances are I will just start doing it with Amazon, right? So now I have different expectations, and organizations like Kroger have to meet my expectations. Otherwise, I will seek to exist as a loyal customer. I will go somewhere else. So in terms of really analytics, what's important here to understand is that as expectations of your consumers continue to rise, if your experiences that you design for them do not change, the perceived value continues to decrease. And as you can imagine, the value of analytics here is truly in our ability to understand what the expectations of the consumers are. Right? We need to get much better at understanding what consumers actually want on the receiving end. And a lot of times companies are either not very good at understanding, or they understand, but they fail to deliver. And so as expectations continue to increase, but the experience does not follow suit, the perceived value continues to decrease. And guess what? In your mind, if the value continues to decrease, you decide to take your money somewhere else. So as expectations rise, without changes in experience, perceived value decreases. I suspect all of you have heard the name Domino's Pizza. I don't know how many of you like Domino's Pizza. This is really not a trick question, right? We are not going to try to figure out what pizza is the best. But these days, Domino's is the largest and most profitable pizza company in the world, certainly the largest one. But that hasn't always been the case. But Domino's became obsessed with one question, and their question was, what if a customer could browse for, order, and pay for a pizza all while waiting at a stoplight? So they wanted to address a very specific need that the consumers had, which is, I want to be able to order things faster. I should not have to go to the website, fill out a longer form, select pizza. It should not take me 10, 15 minutes to do this. How can an organization do this within 30 seconds? And they have been able to deliver on this type of experience. And because of this and other technological advances, they continue to improve the overall consumer experience, and hence they continue to push forward the value. So we now believe that we are getting better experience and better product possibly as a result of that. Hence why Domino's continues to grow. And as you can see, right, analytics is integral to this type of value proposition, because analytics helps us design the type of experience where we can do this within 30 seconds or less. Optimization of the checkout funnel, optimization of the mobile application, optimization of other parts of the shopping process is what made answering this question really possible.
And the perceived value, just to ask you your thought on that, is for a customer, like the pizza, maybe like you said, it's better, the product, their time, right? Their perceived value is I'm saving time. I'm
That's exactly
saving,
right.
right? Hmm.
Now, perceived value, and we'll talk about segmentation, right, in a little bit. And the question here is, who is your ideal customer? Now, chances are somebody who is a true pizza connoisseur, somebody who enjoys having pizza at a nice restaurant with a glass of expensive wine, probably is not going to go to Domino's and buy pizza at a stoplight. So my suspicion is that's not who Domino's is optimizing for. They're
Makes
optimizing
sense.
for the type of user, right, that wants fast experience, that only has X amount of money that they want to be able to spend on pizza. But likely there are a lot more those types of customers than those that are willing to pay $20, $30 per pizza and are willing to have a whole culinary experience around eating pizza. And chances are Domino's knows that some customers they're going to lose because of this. And they're okay taking that bet. So as we're thinking about customer segmentation, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, the question is not always how do I serve my customers, but what types of customers maybe I should not have, because they are not the ones that are actually adding value. Maybe I'm trying to satisfy somebody who is not actually going to be spending money with my organization. Does this help answer your question?
Because right before you came on, I was saying that, you know what, you still want to have a heart for all your customers, but not always spend all your time with all your customers, right? Like, absolutely put the ones over here that aren't going to engage with you because of those reasons and examples you gave for pizza and just others for other businesses. So that's great, because I think it's about spending your time where it's worth it with your resources, your analytics, your investment, and your energy. Yeah.
Absolutely. So why do some organizations fail at the digital transformation? And I would even argue to say that at any transformation. Now, the short answer can be, well, they really have no idea what they're doing, but chances are the answer is not that simplistic. So working with hundreds of organizations around the world, meeting with a lot of executives and seeing many what called, let's say, transformation projects not going well, I was able to pick up on a couple of things that I'm going to share with you. Now, one, as we already discussed, is the digital experience. So it's lack of ability and funds to deliver experience that are easy, effective, and emotional. How many of you like things that are complicated? How many of you would stop buying pizza if you realize, hey, this checkout funnel is going to take me 5 minutes to fill out? It just doesn't work, right? So the question then becomes is how can we use our analytics to truly understand that the experience that we are delivering are easy, they're effective, and they connect with our consumers. Now, sometimes organizations have an idea of what type of experience they want to deliver, but they fail to innovate. They fail to actually deliver it. So it's the lack of skill set to create and test new capabilities and experiences. Other pizza companies possibly decided that, hey, we need to optimize our checkout funnel, or we need to make things easier, faster for the consumers, but they failed to actually deliver. Some simply do not measure or understand what things and experiences customers value. And the key here is not just all of the customers, but your ideal customers. What do your ideal customers actually value? And chances are, right, if we go back to the example of pizza, some customers value absolutely top-notch quality of pizza. And some customers value good pizza, but delivered very quickly. Those are very different customer personas. And you need to figure out which one is the right one. And sometimes it really is the question of digital ecosystems. We do not have the right types of platforms. We do not have the right types of partnerships to actually execute this. That's where a lot of organizations get stuck. So really, there are four ways where projects fail. One is we don't understand the experience, or maybe we do understand the experience, but we do not know how to get there to deliver that experience. Or we simply cannot operationalize that experience. Or sometimes we do not have the skills nor the technologies to actually deliver it. Or we select wrong technologies. And sometimes organizations truly overspend on products or solutions that do not add any value. Now, years ago, and I suspect that many of you have not heard of this website, Boo.com, but Boo.com was an online retail website which showed a lot of promise and had a lot of potential, and many consumers used Boo.com. However, at some point, Mac computers started to get more popular. Then at some point, people started looking at products more on mobile devices. And Boo.com failed to leverage analytics to actually understand that, hey, many people that are coming to our website are coming from Macs. Many people that are coming to the website perhaps are coming from mobile devices, and they failed to optimize the experience of their website for those types of consumers. So the digital experience was poor. They clearly did not figure out how to deliver it or what tools to use to deliver it. And Boo.com failed to exist. And many of us at this point don't even know what Boo.com is or ever was. But if you look at this, right, analytics could have possibly addressed many of the problems that they encountered. Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics can tell us what devices people are coming from. It can tell us what mobile devices people are using. It can tell us what friction points people are encountering when they're browsing through our website. It can tell us what pages people choose to abandon our website on. And it can truly give us a map what we need to improve. But organizations quite often either don't understand how to use the data or they fail to put the data to good use. So with that in mind, right, if those are the areas why organizations fail, then what are the four attributes of success? Why and how do many organizations actually succeed? Well, the first one is not just an analytics recommendation, but really is almost a career recommendation that I may give you. And it goes back to this notion of when you're placed in charge to do anything within the organization, you can use data to take that charge. And this kind of goes back to the Harvard Business Review analysis, where they analyzed the different CEOs, and they've noticed that high-performing CEOs do not necessarily stand out for making great decisions all the time, rather stand out for being more decisive. They make decisions earlier, faster, and with greater conviction. Majority of organizations struggle not with making decisions, but majority of organizations struggle because they do not make the right types of decisions. They either want all the data, or they don't believe the data, or they do not know how to use the data, or they simply do not even collect the data that they need. So analytics, as you can imagine, can truly give you all the data that you need to be able to make a decision. And yes, at some point you have to say, I don't have all the data, but based on the analysis that I have, this is the decision that I can make. And based on this decision, if it goes according to my plan, this is what is going to happen. And if not, then at the very least, this is what we'll be able to learn. Because every decision is a great opportunity for you to learn something about your customer.
Do you think conviction lacks in the trust of the source of data, or just getting beyond also, a track record of using the data too, right? Actually with decisions. There's a little bit of both, you think? There's a lot of underlying reasons why they don't trust it at first sometimes, right?
So one is, I think many executives are somewhat uneducated in terms of that, hey, digital analytics is not perfect, especially when it comes to the world of privacy regulations, right? There is no such thing as a perfect data set. So we have to get comfortable at using data that we have. The other thing to keep in mind is a lot of times we believe that a bad decision is going to ruin our career. Well, but if you really think about it, it's not one bad decision, right? Every major decision is really a combination of 20, 30 small decisions.
Right.
And it can really help you make those small decisions. I always think about this as a way, use data to simply test your hypothesis. But as you pointed out, and this data also supports it, 84% of organizations reported frustrations accessing a variety of data sources and formats, partially because of the Internet of Things and the amount of data that is made available. But when we have so much data and the data is not integrated properly and the data is siloed, a lot of times we don't really know what we are looking for. Data is not the same thing as useful information. And that's our job, right? Is for us to understand what is it that business is really after, and then do the analysis and help them answer the question. I cannot stand when somebody simply gives me a spreadsheet or a report and says the answers are there. Like, if you are truly an analyst, your job is to help me answer my business questions, not just give me the data and hope that I can make sense of it. So this is truly within the organization a partnership of an analyst with a business stakeholder, right? Where they work together on what business questions we are trying to answer and what information or data we are looking for to make those decisions. Does this help?
Yep.
And this, over 70% of organizations report that it takes many days, weeks, or not soon enough to get the information that they need to make decisions. Clearly, this is not what we're after. And whenever this continues to happen, executives give up on even seeking the information or the data that they need. But some organizations are actually great at it and they realize potential. Case in point, company Disney, that many of you, I'm sure, know of. In 2013, Disney released its Magic Band. A Magic Band is this type of band, looks like Fitbit, that you put on your hand, and when you walk through the park, it collects all the information about you, not to mention that you can use it to pay for things. Every single guest of the resort receives this, and Disney collects this data, but then they don't just collect this information, they make real-time decisions using the data that they collect on how to improve your experience, what lines might be getting too long, or what restaurants might be running out of food faster than others because they have lines and more people want to get into them. And this type of information allows them to make important decisions to continuously deliver amazing consumer experience. The second topic is focusing really on the right audience, and something that you were discussing today. And sometimes you have to be comfortable at letting some of your customers go. Now, you do not necessarily need to fire them, but you need to realize that sometimes as your organization continues to change, continues to evolve, that customers that you aggregated over time might choose not to be with you. Going back to the example of Domino's, I'm sure that somebody purchased Domino's pizza once or maybe twice and has no intention of buying the pizza again. They will never be a loyal customer. Maybe they purchased it because the sale was too big to pass on. Maybe they purchased it because they were running out of time and they just needed something fast, but they are not coming back. And chances are you are better off not trying to bring them back with some kind of promotion, because they are not really the customer that you want to have. You need to focus on real success and expectations, not simply the conversion. So what does it mean? We are going into this busy time of year around holidays where organizations do a lot of sales and Black Fridays where they do large discounts. And what tends to happen is that organizations overspend on generating a one-time conversion, but not a long-term customer. And with that, a lot of times they end up losing money, right? Because yes, we generate that conversion. Yes, we report great sales figures for that one day, but then those consumers never come back. So you overpay to generate one-time sale instead of attracting long-term customers. It's not cost efficient to design optimal customer experience for everyone. You have to choose where to invest. And focus on finding the customers that create value for your company long term. And a common example is airlines. I tend to fly quite a bit. And because of how much I fly, I'm the highest tier customer for a number of airlines, including Delta. And a lot of times when, let's say, the flight is canceled or there is some kind of delay, I will get probably a better customer service than somebody that only flown Delta once and possibly purchased, let's say, a discounted ticket. And Delta realizes that not everyone is going to be happy with that customer service, but what they choose to do is focus on consumers that continuously bring them money, not just this year, but over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Now, we can argue, is it fair or not fair? That's a different question. But ultimately, Delta recognizes that, hey, we need to be focused on likely protecting the relationship that can generate $10,000, $20,000 in travel every year versus somebody who only purchased our ticket once because it was on sale and it was maybe the only direct route this person could buy. Focusing on the right audience means we need to create new sources of customer value. So how do we continuously bring more value to our ideal customer? How do we deliver world-class customer experience? And those organizations become truly customer obsessed. And guess what? It pays off in the long run. 7 years stack performance of customer experience leaders, laggards, and S&P 500. And as you can see, those organizations that have been recognized as leaders in customer experience outperform those organizations that do not. It's as simple as that. But again, to do this, you cannot satisfy everyone. You need to focus on your ideal customer profile. And here again is where data can truly help you. Doing activities like customer lifetime value, you can determine what is my ideal customer profile. Those customers that will be my most loyal customers that will generate the most revenue for my business. Third one is we need to understand the new environment. And we already talked about this a little, but the environment is changing because consumers now have different appreciation for privacy and for data control. We expect more from brands. There are also regulatory changes. In the United States, California Consumer Privacy Act and many other state laws that are taking place. And we're also experiencing technology paradigm changes, where browser and technology changes impacting the new technologies. For example, we possibly hear about third-party cookie deprecation. We keep hearing Facebook complaining about Apple because of access to data. So technologies are shifting. And what is available for organizations to do marketing? is going to change over the next couple of years. So we need to be mindful of these things. Otherwise, we are going to fail in over-delivering on consumer expectations. And this is just a brief timeline of all of the, or not even all of them, but some of the changes that are happening, regulatory changes that are happening, and technology changes that are happening. As you can see, they're accelerating. More and more changes are happening every single month, which means that as organizations really need to be focused on building a durable infrastructure and treating customer data with respect and care and transparency.
You know, one thing I'm curious about your thoughts on is how, as these an evolution of new laws come into place and regulation, do we pivot, right? And how do we adapt as an analyst once we feel like we have a foundation of information and, you know, where with that agility factor, right? What do you think is the best practice with all the emerging parameters that we're operating in your thought?
Yeah, the biggest one is this, actually, which
Okay.
is the fourth one. It's experimentation. And many of our partners ask us very similar question. Hey, you know, Google Sandbox is coming, right? How is this going to impact our marketing? Or if we are not able to stitch user data together, how is this going to impact our ROI? And our response is, well, let's test it. Let's see how the type of ROI that we are able to expect right now from our campaigns. And then let's test our ability to do marketing and advertising using a limited set of tools that will where likely this is going to take place, right? And then let's compare our findings. And a lot of times, you know, they'll show to clients that look, you are likely to experience a percent drop in ROI from your current marketing channels because of this. And here's what you can do to mitigate this, or here's what you can do to address this type of change, right? And there is no one answer that will be true for all of the organizations. So you have to be mindful of what is taking place, what your ideal customers are looking for, and then experiment your way into delivering the right type of experience. But guess what? Experimentation, the only way you can truly experiment is if you do something and then you collect data about what is experimentation, right? Is setting or conducting a test and then collecting data to determine what did we learn from that test. So that's what organizations need to be doing even more than before. Now, going back to Domino's, Domino's is a prime example of experimentation. They keep doing things to see how market is going to respond to them. And some will work and some will not work. But if you continue doing this often enough, you're going to have more successes than failures, and that's what matters. Domino's also has an artificial intelligence ordering bot where you can simply talk to Dom and Dom will place an order for you. You do not actually need to do anything on the website. It's their true first bot that is being one kind of first example in the industry of us being able to do something like this. That's not where they stopped. Now they are looking at the delivery of Domino's pizza via autonomous vehicles. Again, is this something that's going to be available tomorrow? Probably not. Is it something that might become available over the next year? Probably so. And that's what they want to do. They want to be the first ones to bring it to market, and they want to see, is our audience going to be responsive to something like this? And they're testing this actually in Houston, Texas. Additionally, Domino's integrates with many common solutions such as Slack, such as Messenger, such as Smart TV, where you can actually order Domino's pizza through your Smart TV. Now I have in my car, I have Apple Car, And with an Apple Car, there is now Panera app. And Panera app allows me to place my order while I'm driving in my car. So then I can stop by Panera and pick up my order. These types of experiments is what really allows you to come up on top and exceed your consumer expectations. And again, analytics is what helps you see which ones work, which ones do not, and those that do not, what can you do to tweak them to turn them into winning experiments. Domino's, as I mentioned, is now the world's largest pizza company. And as a tech company, they're so dedicated to excellence in technology that they have innovation garage. And they are certainly not the only company that has this. Disney continuously has different proofs of concepts like a startup. And they allocate small budgets, they take risk, and they see where this takes them. They're certainly willing to bet big on data solutions that can facilitate the exciting, frictionless experience for their consumers. And that's why their Disney parks perform so much better than any type of competition. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, is that analytics, if we really consider the power of data, can truly be a transformative force for any organization that you work with and really for your role. Any questions that I might be able to answer? Hope this was helpful.
Well, first I'll say, and then I'll open up to the class. Thank you very much. I think I didn't realize Domino's was so smart. I mean, like literally, I did not know these things exist. That you mentioned on the voice. I didn't realize I had that. Dom, I didn't realize that. I mean, I don't get them often, but I think of simple calling in or maybe ordering off the app, but I didn't realize they had the voice, and then realize they were testing out delivery. So it even goes to show, like, even a pretty straightforward the fast food or food chain
Exactly.
can get smart and use analytics to drive various experiences. That's a great example. Yeah, and especially Disney. How about the class? What questions do y'all have? Always a fun time. I'd love for at least 2 or 3 of y'all to ask a question. Who would like to take an opportunity to ask a question?
I've got a quick one, kind of about the Domino story you had there. So from what I understand, a lot of people are really skeptical about using AI or machine learning to capture their voice and use it and train it to, basically function better altogether, just because, it's, for a lot of people, feels like an invasion of privacy. Do you think that kind of hesitation has kind of eroded past pandemic years, or do you think it's still a big thing going forward that's going to be a challenge?
So I think it's any type of data collection is only going to continue being a challenge, right? And that's why organization needs to be so transparent and upfront, right? So I suspect, right, if I was advising an organization that wanted to bring these capabilities, the first thing that I would, well, one of the first things that I would advise them is, great, we need to figure out how are we going to communicate to consumers how their data is going to be used and how their data is not going to be used. Maybe before even the first order is placed, I would say you have an option where we can store your voice data, right? Because I can certainly record it to optimize the experience. Or I can say, if you decide not to, data will be erased after the order is placed. So now consumer understands, okay, I have a choice, right? They can take this information and I can say, look, we're going to record your session. The data will be completely anonymized, but us recording it and storing that information will help us improve the voice to click or whatever the function is experience. Or they might say, again, if you are not comfortable doing that, we will delete that information. So give consumers a choice. One is, especially with all the regulations, it's a requirement, right? Consumers has to opt in. The consumer has to make the decision in terms of what is being collected about them and how. And it also, if you start to notice that every consumer opts out or says, no, I do not want you to save my information, perhaps it's time also to look at your brand, right? And does your brand have actually trust within your audience? Because maybe there is something that you need to do to really demonstrate your commitment to privacy of your consumers, because for whatever reason they are not doing it. It is the question of value exchange, right? I mean, typically we don't mind sharing data if we believe that, hey, the data is going to be used in the right way and that I'm getting enough value out of it. And sometimes I'll give you a very simple example. I've used it actually in the book. Whenever I'm at different airports, especially international airports, and if I'm trying to connect to Wi-Fi, sometimes I get this long form that asks me for everything, and a lot of times the form is not even in English. And I'm looking at this and saying, this is a lot of information, right? The experience is not great. And what am I going to get in return? I'm going to get access to Wi-Fi. Well, do I really need it? I'm just going to read a book. And right, they are not getting the data because the experience sort of sucks, right? I do not get enough value because of that. So those are a couple of maybe thoughts in terms of the data sharing. Be very upfront, transparent, and have a truly good value proposition on what consumers are going to get as a result of them sharing their information.
Now, that makes me want to ask you what your thoughts are about third-party data use these days, right? Like, we want to collect a lot of first-party data with consent, but where do you see third-party data going as far as some of that, with sharing, but also the need for outside sources? I think one of the things I think you mentioned was know your internal data first. You have it, use it. Is third-party data something that even companies should start with anyways? Know your data first, then go to third-party?
So I would not discount the importance of third-party data. And I think it's going to be more limited than it has been before. But at some point, organizations will say, hey, what other data can we have access to? And yeah, third-party data might be a good option. You might also have a good need for context data. I'll tell you this number of, for example, retailers, we use weather data to optimize their ad spend, right? Because as you can imagine, for example, if we can forecast certain weather conditions, then we can use it to promote different products. So in this case, right, but I would say this should not be the first thing you do. As you can imagine, it's technologically rather complicated. And so once you feel like, okay, we've done as much as we could with our first-party data and this analysis that we can use, and now I want to expand it, great. Start testing that other third-party data, but just be mindful, where does the data come from? And talking about durable strategies, right? You do not want to rely on something that is likely going to continue decreasing quality.
Yeah, my thought was definitely around that. I mean, you hear like I want more information from my customers. I want to know more market insights, competitive insights, what they're doing outside of our sphere. But it's like, yeah, but do you understand your sphere well enough, right? Like, do you understand what you already have and how to manage that to be successful, to be strategic? There's a lot there is. I mean, we are getting limited with what can be available based on third-party cookies and whatnot. But I just don't know if you've seen clients out there who need to get out of this mentality that you need to start focusing internal first. That's best practice. Then focus on the external, kind of data, unless you really need it to tell some kind of story that you can't tell without with what you already have potentially, right?
I'll give you another maybe like anecdotal example, right? So I on Sunday I ran New York Marathon, and what I found interesting that besides the run itself that pertains to this discussion is,
congratulations, by the way.
thank you. At the end of the run, right, I got a couple of text messages from people almost within the first couple of minutes. And I was sort of puzzled, like, I mean, one is I didn't advertise the fact. I mean, some of my close friends knew that I was running, but I certainly did not make it widely available. So I was curious, how did they find out? Now, the answer was rather simple, right? New York Marathon, they have an app. You can download an app, you enter the person's name, and it shows you where the person is. But initially, okay, fine, whatever, I don't really care. But then I started thinking about it. Well, but they're using my data. Other people can see. I mean, again, I don't really care. But these types of things, as now I would say, organizations need to be mindful of, right? Should the company like New York Marathon, or whoever the organizer is, consider this and give me an option, right? It's one thing for me to simply, for them to track my performance, right? To really validate my time, so then I can qualify for Boston. But what if I do not want to make my time available for other people to see? What if I'm embarrassed about how slowly I ran? Should the data be widely available for everyone, right? Those, I think, are the types of things that now organizations need to become very mindful of.
That's very interesting. That's a good example because I didn't think of, just activity based or like, yeah, that's just a good example where you have to be cognizant to what's out there, what's being collected as a consumer, but also as a company, where our lane is at, right? And then obviously regulation. So, yeah. Any other questions from the class? Look for one or two more great questions to come in.
Michael, I have a quick question. Uh, so with the new restrictions coming on data collection and with new policies coming into effect, do you think for an organization which has just started its digital transformation journey, is it going to take more time to reach the maturity, or is it going to be less time to reach that maturity?
Yeah, I don't think the time to reach maturity really changes, because one is, what is truly maturity, right? It's, yes, there are different models of digital analytics maturity. I probably have seen majority of them, right, or at least the majority of them established ones. And I can tell you one thing, right? That one of the key things that differentiates mature organization versus immature organization is the amount of tests that it's running. Yes, some organizations start saying, well, but we also have a DSP, or we also have a consumer data platform, but we also have this. The amount of tools that you have really does not, it more impacts the amount of money that you spend on your MarTech. It does not really it does not impact your maturity. I've seen organizations spend a lot of money on tools and there's nothing to show for. I don't think that regulatory changes are going to make that easier or not easier. You can say that, well, look, all of these changes are making marketers' life more difficult. Well, that's very also questionable, right? Because if you imagine you have no rules and you can do whatever you want, then your job is kind of difficult, because you basically are going to be outbid by somebody who has more money, right? If there are no rules, then typically the stronger simply outperforms, right? Because again, if there are no rules, then, and I have more money, then what can you really do? I will outspend you every single time. On the other hand, if you have more rules, to me, it seems like, well, then smaller players actually have more power, right? Because again, rules, they sort of set the guardrails where I have to compete by the same rules as you have to compete. So with that, I think it makes it's a great equalizer, right? Because again, privacy rules are the same for all organizations. So now organization cannot say, oh shit, I'm going to spend $1 million to buy third-party data and do all other stuff. They can, right? They have to do the same exercise. Who's my ideal customer? How do I engage with my ideal customer? What is the value proposition of me collecting the data? Just like a smaller company does. So don't think it's going to have impact on time to maturity, but I do think it will impact maybe the creativity, right? I think organizations will need to find ultimately things that add more value to consumers. So I think it's actually good for consumers.
Good. I like
Thanks.
the idea that maturity is subjective, sort of, too, right? Like you said, I've worked in places, great tools. What are we doing with it? right?
Yep.
So it's maturity of the insights, maturity of actions, maturity of effective results and decisions from the analytics. That right there is like how fast can you actually start assimilating not just the data but knowledge and usefulness of it, right? That's maturity, in my opinion. The insights.
Agreed.
Yep. Good. Any other questions from the class?
Yes, Professor, I have one.
Sure.
Amazing presentation, Michael, by the way. And then I have one question as you're talking about the marathon and the advertisement. And I was just curious, as businesses are increasing day by day, and as we are approaching recession, do you think businesses should reduce the advertisements they're providing?
So just to understand the question, should our organizations decrease advertisements?
Yeah, reduce the number of advertisements they are presenting right now as you are approaching recession as a digital marketer?
I don't think you should. I mean, look, what is advertising really, right? If I tell you for every dollar that you spend on marketing, you can generate 5 cents of profitability, right? Would you find $10? Right? So the marketing is like, why not? Right? When I don't really, there's this quote, right? The marketing is the price that you pay for being boring. I think it's a complete horseshit. I mean, yes, you obviously have outliers like Tesla that don't really need to advertise, but I mean, they have a charismatic leader. But for majority organizations, yes, certainly if you can be creative and you can come up with all kinds of cool things, but that's also advertising that you likely going to spend money on. So I'm not against advertisement. Again, if you, for every dollar that you spend, if you can actually generate profit, great. It's amazing, right? Keep doing it. Now, you still want to be able to build relationships with consumers. You still want for consumers to buy from you without advertisement, right? That's the idea of loyal customer, right? I go to delta.com regardless if I see their ad.
Definitely, yeah.
At this point, right, because of the tiers, because of the customer service that I get, honestly, I'm not even that price sensitive. I mean, partially because of my work, but honestly, if my flight is $50 more expensive than a flight on Atlanta or on United, sorry, I wouldn't think twice. So at this point, yes, they continue to advertise, but they don't really rely on advertisement when it comes to getting me as a customer. They rely on their customer service when it comes to keeping me as a customer. Now, in terms of the changes that are happening, well, changes that are happening, you need to understand how they're going to impact your advertising. Now, there is going to be a big change in terms of our ability to do remarketing. It's not going to be as effective as it has been up to this point. But that doesn't mean that you should stop doing remarketing. It means that you need to understand how your remarketing is going to change. And if you cannot do remarketing, then where are you going to spend your money? So what is your next best channel to move your budget? So you want to run those types of tests, do this type of analysis to basically figure out, look, in the past, for every dollar that I spent, I would get 5 cents in profitability. That likely is not going to happen, but under the new model, for every dollar spent, I will get 2 cents of profitability. Still good, right? Yes, it's not as good as it was before, but that's the new reality. And you knowing this is extremely valuable.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Well, any more questions? I know we're up at the top of the hour, and Michael, I'm sure you've had a long day, but any other
Okay.
questions from anyone?
Michael, I had a question.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, so you talked about like the reasons why the companies fail during their digital transformation. That may be because of like lack of funds or something regarding they haven't like discussed the purpose clearly. But like sometimes like the major thing that happens is like resistance to change among the existing employees whenever you are bringing a change in the organization. So like how do like you advise companies to like proactively, take that into account?
So how to bring change into the organization?
Yeah, like especially managing the resistance to change.
Yeah. Um, so uh, obviously, I think education, right? Being transparent with your own audience. I think you need to be very clear of where the company is headed and why, right? I think a lot of times executives say like, that we need to be doing this, but there is no compelling why, right? So people that are working at their organization don't really know why they should be doing it. So I think that's important, right? Really educating. I think the other one is really and rewarding the types of behaviors that you want to see is also very important, right? And then look, also likely similar to kind of we talk about ideal customer profile, you probably also have ideal employee profile, and sometimes change is hard, right? And so sometimes not everyone within the organization will want to change. And some organizations don't do anything about it, and those people drag the company behind. Right? So sometimes you might also have to say, look, you're great, but we are going in a different direction, and we need for everyone to be on board. And if you are not on board, then we'll help you find another opportunity. But because of overall, you know, when you run a large company, that's tricky to do, right? And so sometimes companies end up with a lot of people that just end up sort of working there for a paycheck. They are not really committed. They don't buy into that, but hey, the money is good. But then they start talking, right, within themselves, and then you start almost having them convincing other people within the organization that the direction of the company is garbage. So do you really need to make sure that everyone within the organization, once the decision is made, right? We kind of typically like to think, look, let's debate and let's really work together to find the right answer. But once the answer is made, all hands on deck. Even if you disagreed with that, you have to be committed because we as a company, we made the decision. And we'll be very transparent as far as why the certain decision was made, what options were considered, the how implications, but then everyone has to get on the same page and deliver. Otherwise, it's just not going to work.
Thank you.
Sure.
I love the word, we say data-driven decisions. And it's like the shock and awe when you start seeing people say, wait, we made that decision off not ego or assumptions and opinion anymore. And it actually starts to work sometimes, but then it takes a while though to truly see the company, the organization is data-driven. Maybe they have some data-driven people, but like you said, influence, build some trust, get some results, right?
It's a great equalizer.
Yeah, I think most companies want to nowadays aspire to be data driven, but there's a gap there that they need to fill with that. All the advice you just gave for sure. That's the hard part. At some levels, it's the hard part. Tools are there, smart analysts are there, but it's just now culture change.
It has to be a habit, right? Again, conceptually, I cannot see everyone in the who's on the call, but if I ask you, how many of you believe that exercise is important? How many of you would raise your hand? I mean, probably everyone, right? Conceptually, we tend to know that, hey, exercise is good. Like, I'm not saying anything controversial here. But still, I suspect that not everyone exercises or cares to exercise. And it's not a judgment, right? Everyone does whatever they enjoy. But again, conceptually, we might say, yeah, data is important, but all right, but still something is just, we don't have the habit of actually using it. Once you develop it as a habit, then you don't really see any other way. If you have a habit of drinking coffee every morning, you don't see it any other way. You won't have a cup of coffee. If you have a habit of exercising every morning, you exercise every morning. It's a habit. If you have a habit, hey, I need to get data before I will make a decision, then it becomes a habit. You will not have it any other way.
Good. Yeah. Well, that's why they take a program like this and business analytics and go influence in the organizations that they're going to work for, or they work for now. Some I think have jobs already, but that's the part of the discipline we're trying to instill in these programs. This program is like you're going to learn a bunch of great methods and analytics and data, but be out there and be advocates for it and make it a habit for sure. So, well, Michael, I guess we're at the top of the hour. I want to thank you so much. I think this was
My
great. Fantastic information. Yeah, I think I'd love to have you back at some point, another topic, but in general, thank you so much. And, we'll be in touch, but thank you. This was really helpful. I think we covered a lot of ground in the last hour, actually.
Fantastic. Kyle, you have my information. If anyone wants to connect with me, Kyle has my information. I'm also pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So feel free to send me a message.
Okay, great. And I'll let everybody go. We'll dismiss the class. Thank you guys. Have a great week. And Michael will be in touch. And thanks, everyone.
See you.
Great conversation.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Good night.
Michael,
Yeah.
thanks for
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, y'all. See you next week.